So like encouraging people to acknowledge that they're wrong about stuff is like the fastest way to get your overall organization to be actually right about things, more things. And it's just disagreeing. And that can happen obviously between departments, where designers talking to engineers, and those cultural differences like clashing. PMs in a lot of companies I've worked at NBC Universal, which is a massive company. It worked with a ton of Fortune 500 companies, and I've worked with a bunch of startups, especially the larger organizations. They try and start segregating different departments, and so then there's a bunch of gatekeepers between departments, even within companies. And what you're doing is you're just like lessening disagreement so that you can have sort of like this illusion of harmony. And then you have sort of
and efficiency
problem that exists there.
Yeah. And there's no evidence that you're actually solving any problems because you're not thinking of problems anymore. You're just thinking in like efficiencies. Like it's a
problem solving is messy. It's what about this? What about that? Disagree with this. How do we get this? Test this. How do we see the results? What can we put this in the hands of users? Did you miss this part? So it's so messy. And if you're frustrated, like the way you know you're working on interesting, powerful stuff as a designer is if you feel like totally overwhelmed and frustrated and like you're like detail swear word. If you're just like focused on these like really small sort of like things and just like wrestling with things and like having trade-offs and like feeling lost and feeling like you're never going to come anywhere at the end of this and having like hard disagreements where you have to sort of still build trust. I mean, that's so messy, and it feels like there's no way that this is sustainable or right. And that's usually a sign that you're working on something like important and you're probably solving some important problems. Because if you're not solving problems, then someone's going to have to deal with those problems. And it's usually going to end up being the end user, right? And most, especially software versus physical things need to work like bridges. But software is like bits and bytes. There's actually so much more room for people's biases and opinions to get things wrong. And so 70 to 80% or more of software fail. And it's for all those reasons and others.
Yeah. They think that it existing is the value add when it actually delivering on the promises of the value proposition is the value add. Like that there's like this social contract being met when we advertise something and it actually does the thing. Alex Ramosi talks about this all the time in his podcast. He's like, no, like you're successful when you delivered on the promise, and even better, over delivered. And if you don't do that, if the point of doing business is just to build functional useless artifacts, just don't work for those companies. And then,
the world is not a museum of like your visual creative ideas that you were right about, right?
I got paid to do this.
Yeah.
I didn't make any money, but I got paid.
What impact did you have? What results did you have?
Yes.
How did you change it and respond to the real need and the real problems that are being solved? It's design is an art and a science, but it's the science part of it needs to work, right? It's not just a think piece for you to be whimsical and show your stuff in a movie theater or in a museum. It's not that personal, right? It has to collaborate. It has to work. It has to solve something.
The one truth that I learned is that if you don't work, the problem will work you. And what the problem working you looks like: frustration, silos, lack of critical thinking, nepotism, all that stuff. Okay, the problem is just going to kick your butt if you're not going to work the problem and be proactive. Like you're going to just pay the price. And then you do pass the cost on to the end user if you don't do it as well. So then the problem continues to work on the customer.